Welcome back to the Leaderonomics show. Today with us we have Dr. Alan Langer. Welcome back. Okay. But you know, when you talk about, let's talk about this whole concept of mindfulness. What are some examples of how we can be more mindful?
Okay.
I mean, simple ways.
I know that it's hard to accept it because it is so simple. All you need to do is notice new things. Now you might say, how do we get people to notice new things? And the way to get people, I think, one way at least, to get people to notice new things is for them to become aware that they don't know the things that they think they do know. You know, so when I give lectures, I often have a set of slides where I show the audience how mindless they are. And then all of a sudden, oh my goodness, because initially it seems like this is something everybody around me who frustrates me, they're all mindless, but I am supremely mindful. And the reason for that is that when I'm mindless, again, I'm oblivious to it, you know.
Let's say we take, start to notice things. I mean, that takes time. In some way or form. I mean, we have to pull ourselves out somewhat to be able to see things, right? Or no?
No, I don't. You know, does living take time? Well, hopefully, you know. Okay. I mean, it's time well spent. It's not extra time. You know, if you're going to be talking to somebody, be there. If you're going to be brushing your teeth, be there. You want to have a cookie, actually taste it. You know, that I don't think it takes more time to eat the cookie mindlessly than it does to eat it mindfully. But it's interesting because people do think that often it takes longer to do it mindfully than mindlessly. Very well, I don't know, but very rarely is time of the essence in that way. You know, where milliseconds matter. And so let's use as an example that you and I are speaking, and there's this little child who is getting very close to the curb and is going to go into the street. Now, you might say you want to mindlessly grab the child, right? And I would say that first, if you were mindful, the child wouldn't have gotten to the street in the first place. Second, that you don't want to just mindlessly grab the child, because if there's oncoming traffic, you need to know whether the car is going to turn this way or that way to know which way to pull both you out, to pull the child into a safe space.
Okay, great.
So,
and you have a new book, Counterclockwise.
Yes.
Right? What's that book about? And that's taking the whole notion of mindlessness to the next level, right?
Mindfulness.
Mindfulness. Okay, all right.
Or mindlessness, whichever way. Well, what the book does, the subtitle I think speaks a lot to what the book is about, which is the power of possibility, mindful health and the power of possibility. And what I do is basically two things in that book, with many research examples of both. The first is to get us to understand that we don't know very much about our health, that the medical world doesn't know very much, and that once we can accept that, instead of being scared by that, all sorts of possibilities open up. Then I entertain a hypothesis that's very bizarre in a certain way, very simple in another way. The idea is simply, we take the mind, we take the body, we put them back together. If it's one, then wherever we're putting the mind, we're necessarily putting the body. So I do study after study where I put the mind in strange places, take the measurements from the body, and we get remarkable findings. And all of it started with a study I did quite a while ago, yes, the Counterclockwise study. Okay, basically what we did was to take old men, and these were men in their 80s, and as I'm fond of saying, that was when 80 was 80, not the new 60. So these men were old, okay, and they were going to live in a retreat that we retrofitted to 20 years earlier. They were going to live as if it was in fact 20 years earlier. They would have discussions, for example, twice a day in the present tense. Their minds were in the present, even though it was all about the past. And we had a comparison group that would live in the same retreat, talk about the same things, but for them, this was now and that was then. Okay, so, and the results we got were remarkable. Interestingly, that both groups improved. The experimental group improved even more. We have a sense of, as you get old, you fall apart. Everything falls apart. And so that's why it was so nice to see that even the control group improved, because old people are not supposed to improve. But what happens is that because they were encouraged to take care of themselves, to be who they were, who they could be, let's say, not who they were, but to be all that they could be right now, and that nobody was babying them, they rose to the occasion. It started by accident, actually, that as I was driving to the retreat, I realized, I have these old men in the van with me, and I realized my graduate students weren't with me, and this was a time when things were a little more sexist. And I thought, there's no way I'm going to carry all of those suitcases to the room. So and this was the comparison group, so I made an announcement right at the start that, this is almost at the end once I realized where we were, that they could unpack the suitcases one shirt at a time. They could move the suitcase an inch at a time to get to the room. But basically, they were responsible for it. Now, these are people who were treated as if they were not going to live to the next day, say, prior to this. Their hearing improved, their vision improved. In addition to that, though, for the experimental group, you had greater improvements in gait, posture, decrease in symptoms of arthritis. We had also taken photographs of everybody at the beginning and then at the end, and we had people evaluate the photographs who didn't know which group they were in or what the study was about, and those that had put their minds back in the past looked younger. Yeah.
Okay.
And so we've
and this
done
is just for 7 days.
7 days, yeah.
Wow. Okay.
We've done some recent work to see if we could do this almost instantly, and it looks like we may be able to. No, I'm not going to tell you about that. It's a little premature, but just to whet your appetite, you'll have to pay attention in the future to what's going on. But I'll tell you about some of the studies that we did. That again are based on the simple idea we're going to put the mind and body back together. Wherever we put the mind, we're putting the body, which is the reason that placebos work. You know, placebo is a very powerful medicine, right? Because it's not that little inert pill that's making you better. You're making yourself better, right? So when you think that you should be getting better somehow, and the medical world can't explain it, but I think that this simple idea might explain it. So an example of one of the studies that's easy to describe. When you go to a doctor's office to take a vision test, what you see are letters that are not related to anything, right, in black and white, and it's arranged so that they get progressively smaller. So what that does implicitly is says that soon you're not going to be able to see, right? All we did was turn the chart around. So the letters now get progressively larger, thereby suggesting soon you will be able to see. And we find people could see what they otherwise couldn't. So we have those sorts of studies but all of these studies become more believable when you recognize that the things that would have made them seem unbelievable that we can't know. And let me give an example of that to make that clearer. So when somebody goes to the doctor, they may be told that they have a chronic disease. Now, what the word chronic means is uncontrollable. You can never prove uncontrollability. All you can prove by any experiment, no matter who's doing it, okay, research allows you to say either we can control it or we don't know. But so if you have a disease that you don't know if you can cure yourself, you may try to cure it. If you have a disease where you're led to believe no matter what you do, you don't have a chance, you're not going to try to control it. And once you try to control these diseases, what you see, you'll start to recognize that nothing stays still. Okay, that the symptoms sometimes are better, sometimes are worse. If you attend to that variability, which is the essence of being mindful, right? You're noticing the changes, then it naturally occurs to ask, well, why do I feel a little better now? And then you entertain hypotheses. And the thing that's fun for me is that even if you don't come up with the right answer, all of that research that I've mentioned to you suggests that it's going to be good for your health.
Is there any implications of this in organizations or in leadership?
Oh, yes. Essentially, no matter what you're doing it either mindfully or mindlessly.
Okay.
So everything can be improved by doing it mindfully. In organizations, people have ways of doing things. And those are sort of like the absolutes that are given to us from the medical world. You know, and people don't question, why are we doing it this way? Now, when you recognize that no matter what you're doing was based on decisions that were made at an earlier time, that may not be relevant any longer. You know, and if you're mindful, then you're going to constantly be updating. If you're mindless, you just take it as a given, that that's the way it should be done.